For Kyujo Tsuyui, a life of perfect manners and endless lessons finally paid off with a loveless, strategic marriage to the cold Koichi Naomaya. Don't involve yourself with me. Don't expect anything from me as a husband. Most buyers will be heartbroken, but Tsuyui, she got to her room and was absolutely ecstatic. Freedom at last. No more rules, just her bed, and a certain VTuber named Hinata. She was hooked. And when he announced the live event, she just had to go. A premium ticket, please. Let it be me. It was. At the venue, surrounded by happy groups, she felt a pang of loneliness until a pin trade went sideways. Because her trade partner was her husband. You're my trade partner? I am not. The jig was up, cornered, so Yui made her move. We're allies, I'm an otaku just like you. Let's be friends. And as he dashed away, Tsuyui realized two things. One, she missed her pin trade, and two, this was the bizarre beginning of a very strange marriage. This has been the first chapter of an arranged marriage leads to otaku love, and if you enjoyed, subscribe! So the VTuber convention concert ends, and Tsuyui is in awe over what just went down. She then looks around at everyone talking about the event, and envies that they all have someone to talk about, and then thinks about her husband, that line from her last chapter. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, and goes to text him to see if he'll come walk home with her, only to find out her husband has blocked her, and she's fuming on the inside. She gets home and asks the butler if he's came home yet, to which he says Bo's out eating dinner with important business partners, to which she knows is a lie. He then gets home and goes into his room to find Tsuyui there, and she explains the fact that she just walked in and it wasn't locked, and his heart's beating like the king's engine as she asks him to trade pins, and they do, and she's ecstatic. She explains she can't be this way with anyone else because of her family, and he tells her if it's just them two, she can behave however she likes, and he finds her quite easy to talk to when she's like that. She feels the same for him as well. He then ruins the moment by saying, actually, you don't know how good it was because you're not a weeb like me. After he finished talking, he ends up telling her to get out, and she refuses as she wants to talk to him a bit more. When she tries getting close to prove her point, they fall on each other, and it leads to a door with lots and lots of VTuber and anime stuff. And as he's about to tell her to get out, because in his head, he thinks she's disgusted by this, when she's actually in awe at how he collected all this. She then looks around at all this stuff he has and tells him that he's in the same situation as her and gives her some lore. She then reassures him about how they're allies and she wouldn't tell her so. He suggests instead of allies, they're now partners in crime. And the chapter ends with her saying their married life is gonna be a lot of fun. This has been chapter 2 of an arranged marriage leads to otaku love, and if you enjoyed, subscribe! So the chapter starts off with Koichi coming back home, and he goes to his safe haven, and Tsuyui joins him, and we find out that he lets her use the room under two conditions. One being they behave the same way they always have in public, and the second rule being to avoid the room on days he always is streaming. She then sits down and watches her VTuber interview, and they announce a collab cafe, to which Koichi already knows about, and Tsuyui asks if he wants to go with her, and he eventually says he'll go. They end up getting dropped off at a hotel under the guise that they're gonna meet a business partner. Tsuyui then gets excited as this is her first time downtown with someone else, and turns out this is Koichi's as well. They end up going to the cafe and ordering all their VTuber dishes. On the way back home, they decide to buy some goods, and Koichi asks her if that's all she's getting, and she says she has nowhere to put it and she's glad she could see it in person. Koichi tells her to go wait outside while he pays. They get home and Tsuyui forgets to get her merch from the bag, so she goes into his room only to find Koichi putting up the poster she wanted, and he explains that she could just put them up in his room and tells her that he doesn't want to see her hold herself back anymore, and the chapter ends with her heart doing the king's engine. This has been chapter 3 of an arranged marriage leads to otaku love, and if you enjoyed, subscribe! Ever since the last chapter, Seiryaku has been feeling off, so she thinks she has a fever, and since she's never got one before, she calls the family doctor to do a checkup, and the doctor says she's all clear, then tells her he hasn't been called since his mother was around, and as she goes to ask him about the mother, the doctor looks at his watch and makes a swift exit. Seiryaku then has a flashback when talks of marriage was happening, and they mention his parents. She just said she doesn't mind that he has none and thinks that she should have asked about her then. She's then sat down with Koichi and he asks her if she's okay since he heard she called the doctor, and she said she had a checkup but it came back with no issues. But he tells her if anything's wrong, let him know so he can find a more specialized clinic for her, and she's buzzing knowing that he cares for her. He then flash steps and puts his hand on her forehead, and then she starts burning up and clocks the symptoms only start when Koichi's around. And skipping a couple of things, Koichi then talks about how the house is messed up in so many ways. She then asks him what it means, then he says it has nothing to do with her, and she gets sad and pulls back. And he said that he didn't mean it like that, and says though we're only spouses on paper, it seems different now as they shared the same circumstances. And he wants her to find happiness, which is exactly why he doesn't want her to be involved with his family and the scandals that come with it. And if in the future she decides to divorce him, he'll comply whenever. And although she knows he said those words out of consideration for her, she really doesn't want that. An alarm goes off signaling someone's on the way to their room, and the butler tells Koichi his grandfather is going to be visiting in 10 minutes and to prepare themselves to greet him. And this has been chapter 4 of An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love. And if you enjoyed, subscribe! So chapter 5 shows us the abuse that Koichi had gone through under his grandfather, and a couple servants gave him some manga, which gave him strength to keep going. He then asked them if he has a mother and father, and he prays to God that he gets to meet both. A kid then tells him that he heard his mother was, and then it cuts up to Seiryaku calling his name. And we're back to the present where his grandfather is said to come, and Seiryaku attempts to calm Koichi down by holding his hand, and turns out low-key right. So the grandpa comes and he starts cussing him out instantly. And as Seiryaku's saying Koichi's been kind to him and that they've been getting along, he already knows that's a lie since the servants tell him everything. And she wishes she could show him how well they've hit it off as friends. But her thoughts are then interrupted by the grandpa saying that he's nothing but the son of a whore. The grandpa then explains the whole thing, and she was basically a hoe, and she wound up having a kid that no one knew the father to. So the dad ended up getting like a politician's son who was a lover before, and he claimed the kid only for her to dash off with someone else. Koichi then tells her he didn't want her to know this, and Seiryaku sees how much this has been weighing on Koichi's mind. Seiryaku then starts talking back, speaking about how it doesn't matter what lineage you're from and if you're an illegitimate child, and that the Kujo family focuses more on ability and competency. She then tells him straight up that the one chosen by the Kujo household is Koichi. They didn't marry the Naomiya household, they didn't want anything to do with the grandpa. They wanted competency, which is from Koichi specifically, and any attitude towards Koichi will be straight disrespect on the Kujo household, and she hopes that he's prepared for what that entails, and he's at a loss for words. And then she points him to the exit and says, please take care on your way out. She then breaks down because she hated the fact that just happened, and Koichi apologizes because he said that he'd protect her but he couldn't do anything. And Seiryaku starts crying, saying that she's so frustrated and that she wanted to say way more, like call him stupid or baldy, but since she's from the Kujo household she couldn't say all that. She then says she should have at least called him octopus face, and they start laughing. Koichi then says she was so cool back then and thanks her for everything she's done, and then she said it's the least I could do. And now Koichi reveals that he also loves her. And this has been chapter 5, An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love. And if you enjoyed, subscribe or follow if you're on TikTok. So Koichi's now gone on a business trip, and Seiryaku receives a letter from Koichi. She opens it up to find out that he apologizes for not being home for the past few days and gives the keys to the Otaku safe house to her. He then tells her she's allowed to use it whenever. She's gassed because that's what like actual couples do, and then gets to thinking about what their relationship is right now and what she wants them to become. she dismisses the thought and enters the room. She chills for a while watching VTubers, and Hinata says this stream's gonna be an all-nighter, so she does her best to stay awake. Hinata then asks what they wanted to be as a kid, and Sayuri remembers that she wanted to be a violinist, but as a member of the Kujo household, she couldn't do all that, as people are out there to use her and gain favor with their house. Her mom then tells her she'll find someone that she can be loyal with one day. She then opens her eyes to find Koichi holding her in his hands. He explains that she was fast asleep and looked mad uncomfy. She's sad that he saw her sleep, only for him to say he found it kinda cute. But then he interrupts himself. Koichi then asks why she's up so late. She explains that they were playing a difficult game and they bond over that. Sayuri then asks if he had any dreams as a kid, and he explains that he wanted to get away from home since his grandpa's abusive, and asks his grandpa if he gets into the Tokyo University if he could be independent from the household. But his grandpa shot it all down and said that he'd be next in line for the Naomiya household. And now here he is still listening to his grandpa's every word. Sayuri then says that he still hasn't revealed what he wanted to do, and he reveals that he wanted to make video games for people like them, educational video games, and that's it fun to learn stuff. He tells her that he's given up on it though, and in Sayuri's head it just confirms that she really does like Koichi. She then says she'll make it happen with her family, and as she goes on to explain how, Koichi asks her if she's sure she wants to get involved with his life, and she responds saying that that's just about everything she could hope for. Koichi starts blushing and says that he wants the two of them to, but then gets cut off by Sayuri, who's thinking about how to make this happen. This has been chapter 6 of An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love, and if you enjoyed, subscribe! So Sayuri wakes up to find that she's lost the key, and she's gathered the maids to go help her find it, and they all say they haven't seen it. And then she says it might have been in front of Koichi's room. Yeah, and this causes the maids to have a whole fanfic about him. They're talking about all of it for the sake of an heir, and she's clocked that the servant's image of her has gone off the rails, and she can't take any more of it, so she goes to go find the key holder. And an old servant points her to the head servant, and then the head servant asks what's the issue, and Sayuri's scared because if he finds out it's long, so she just dips, and Koichi finally comes back home. And she's thinking to herself she has to discuss this matter with Koichi because it's long. But he clocks instantly that something's up and asks her in front of everyone, in front of the maids, like, what's the issue? And all the maids, because of the fanfic, they're like buzzing. And she explains the whole situation. And Koichi does not care, like, is that it type shit. Like, as he then goes on to explain that his VTuber looks like a little girl, and her one looks like a normal guy, so it's all good. But Sayuri starts overthinking and tells him that if the grandfather ends up finding out, it'd be so long for her, since she's already on bad terms with the grandpa because of the fight they had in chapter 5. She doesn't want to be driven out of the house, which is valid, and she'll no longer be able to stay by his side. Koichi then goes in for the hug and says, I'll never let that happen, and says, I'll never let you go. You man, take notes. And then she, in her head, she's like, does that mean? And then they're about to lips, but pew, wee-woo. And the head servant comes in, interrupting them both, saying, urgent call has just come from the main residence. The two of you are urged to head out to meet the master with utmost haste. And they're all confused. So if you enjoyed this chapter 7 of An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love, hit that subscribe button for me, please. The chapter starts off with Koichi finding out that his grandfather's collapsed, and the head servant advises him to prepare for the worst possible outcome. And as they get to the place, we see all his family members, the execs, and they're all talking about the inheritance and who's gonna take over. Koichi says those guys never change, and we see the family doctor again. He tells Koichi that he has a letter for him in case anything were to happen to the master. Koichi then opens up the letter, and it says that he's to be the successor to the Naomiya Corporation. And this is all a bit overwhelming for him, so he asks everyone to leave the room. And as Sayuri goes to leave the room, Koichi goes up behind and says, "Not you." They get to talking like he's just saying everything that's on his mind. He reveals to her that he doesn't feel anything. She then tells him that he wants to feel sad right now, but since it's the person that took away all his happiness, she reassures him that none of this is his fault and asks him not to blame himself over that. The head servant then butts in and says, "It's just as the madam says." The head servant then says the master was a failure as a guardian and gives the key Sayuri lost last chapter back. He also apologizes for being no help until now. Koichi starts shouting at him saying, "Why does he have this?" And he says that it was dropped in front of his room and he had it ever since. He also admits that he's been aware of both of their true personalities and their entire relationship. Koichi then figures out that when he was a kid, there were a couple occasions where the manga he hid would be moved elsewhere. And he says that he hid them because the other staff might have found out. He then tells us that he assists Kayako, which is Koichi's mom, and sends her reports on how Koichi's doing. Sayuri then looks at Koichi saying, "To receive all these shocking details at once, are you okay, Koichi?" And he's gone. Like his eyes looking one way, the other eyes looking down his lung. He's speaking like Inumaki, and he's information overloaded. The head servant then says, "Allow me to start from the beginning." And he explains that his mother was abused as well, and she left the kid and told the grandpa to take care of the kid, and he couldn't bear to toss it aside, so he took care of the kid, but it only resulted in him having a harsh childhood. Koichi then says that if he got told this before, he wouldn't understand at all, but now that he has Sayuri, he gets it. He then tells Sayuri that he loves her and asks her to stay by his side, and she says, "Of course." And then Koichi said, "Good to hear." Then he locks in, sits down and says, "Gather everyone here." And that's where chapter 7 of An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love ends. And if you enjoyed, subscribe! So, it's been a month since he succeeded his grandpa in the company, and the execs and his family oppose his decision, but he invalidates all their arguments with ease. And as for his grandfather, he hardly escapes death, and the doctor's over here laughing about it. Koichi then asks what caused him to collapse anyway, and the doctor informs him that it's his unchecked diabetes. Koichi then tells his grandpa that he needs to organize his files way better because it's so inefficient. So Yuri then says that with all the commotion about Koichi's succession, she hasn't found the perfect moment to tell Koichi that she loves him. Last chapter, Koichi said it to her. So Yui then goes to the head servant for advice as Koichi returns to the office. The head servant then says he could ask the staff for help. So Yui advises against it as the servants are too on it. The head servant also tells her that there's no need to hide no more, and she ends up flaunting her VTuber stuff and her anime collection stuff. So now she can stop hiding herself. The servants then ask her about it as they see her flaunt it, and they mistake it for an anime thingy when it's actually a VTuber thing. She then tells Koichi about all this, and he's glad for her, because seeing her able to live and enjoy life, nothing makes him happier. And the servants are in her back, loving this. Koichi then goes to the room, and she's pissed that she still hasn't given him her reply yet. And the maid comes in saying, "Your package has arrived," and the package contains the concert they went to in chapter 1. And she's thinking that this is gonna be the perfect time to tell him. But as soon as it starts, they start yelling, screaming, and Sayuri comes to find out that this is definitely not the time to say it, as the atmosphere she wanted to confess this was not it. Then she's like, whatever, man. Just seeing him smile is enough for me. And I mess with that heavy. They finish watching the concert, and Koichi goes on a monologue about how VTubers helped him find Sayuri and how he's so glad about that. Sayuri then goes in for the hug and tells him that she loves him and asks Koichi to stay by her side forever. And then they start kissing. And Koichi tells her how long he's been waiting for this. They then speak about things they're gonna do in the future, and Sayuri ends it off by saying as long as she's with Koichi, it feels like she could do anything. And the chapter ends with the two of them hugging. This has been chapter 9, the final chapter of An Arranged Marriage Leads to Otaku Love. And if you enjoyed, subscribe!